Welcome to the show, folks. I am that Chris Gore. Another episode of PodCRASH for you. And I'm one of those guys, if you know me, I'm kind of OCD. I'm ADD, HD, OCD. And I love to organize stuff. One of my favorite things is to organize stuff. One of my favorite, actually, Tumblr. I know a lot of people look at Tumblr and they look at Tumblr for naked pictures of girls. I look at Tumblr for a blog called Things Organized Neatly. That is my porn. I love looking at things that are organized incredibly neatly. And I'm going through some stuff in my garage, and the one thing I realize is I save old technology to my detriment. I've got old video game systems. This was one of the first ways that you could watch MPEG-1 videos on a thing called a Philips CDI player. And I actually have it's basically movies on a compact disc. And so you would buy films and then you would get them on 2 compact discs. And so I still have a Philips CDI player. And it was basically to play video games. Wait, I should mention, it's played video games and to play movies. I should mention that my producer, Sean Merrick, is standing here with me. Yeah. And he's got a wide-eyed look about.
You mentioned the CDI, and all I can think of is like the shitty Mario and the Zelda license they put out.
Oh, you even remember those games?
Yeah, I never.
They were terrible.
It was kind of like
they were terrible.
Yeah.
So the games on the Philips CDI were bad, but it was one of the one of the first places you could actually watch movies on a compact disc, which was sort of the first step towards DVD. But even before that, I had a Laserdisc player, and I didn't just have a Laserdisc player. I had a Pioneer Laser Active player that had a slot that you could play Sega Genesis, Sega CD games.
Really?
Yeah, you could play Sega CD games like Echo the Dolphin.
Did you have Night Trap?
I had Night Trap. There's a long story with that, actually. I had Night Trap. I had Sewer Shark, if you remember Sewer Shark. Yep. And I liked the full motion video games. I was the only person at the time. I worked on a video game magazine called Video Games. Well, it was originally called Video Games and Computer Entertainment, or VGNCE magazine. So I worked on that magazine. That's a long-winded story for another time, but I worked on that magazine because I was just a video game nerd, and I love to collect those old systems. So I had a Laserdisc player that was a laser active player, so you could play Laserdisc-based video games. So as I'm going through the garage, I'm finding like I have kept old Laserdiscs.
So these are like the huge Laserdisc.
They look like records. They look like albums. Okay. So the ones that I've kept are things like I'm going to admit, I kept Tron. I have a Japanese Laserdisc of Dune and Star Wars Episode 1 on Japanese Laserdisc. I know. This is before the special edition 3D version of The Phantom Menace, which will be coming out soon.
So do you feel guilty for keeping these, or is it because, these sound like collector's items.
It's not guilt so much as stupidity, because I'm constantly collected this stuff, and I also, I feel like DVDs are going that way. DVDs and Blu-ray are, the future is obviously going to be download.
Yeah.
I mean, let's be honest. Blu-ray, because you had competing formats with HD, DVD, and then you had Blu-ray. That competition confused consumers to the point where they just didn't adopt the HD version. Plus the fact that the up-resing was so good on Blu-ray players, you could put a standard def DVD into a Blu-ray player, and it looked great. To the point where I'd be at Best Buy and I'd have some old ladies say, which one is the Blu-ray? Which one is the HD? You couldn't tell, and that's disheartening. But that's not my story. My story is I'm going through boxes of stuff in my garage with DVDs and happen across a box of Red, a movie I made called Red years ago. When I first moved to Los Angeles in the early 90s, I met Lawrence Tierney, and I did a short film with him. It's like a 30-minute short, shot in black and white, Super 8, which was cut on video, and it's about the Tube Bar. You ever heard of the Tube Bar tapes?
No.
The Tube Bar are these tapes that are like these series of prank phone calls. You've seen The Simpsons, that sketch with Moe where
Bart calls up and says, hey, Amanda, hug and kiss, and yeah.
That's all from the Red tapes, or also known as the Tube Bar tapes. So I made this short years ago, which I put out on VHS, and from that kind of became like this cult thing. I'm not going to sit here and tell you it's the greatest movie ever, but there's some funny stuff in it. There's some funny stuff. It's basically a way where I used the actual phone calls and as a way to kind of tell the story.
Did this predate Jerky Boys?
This was around the same time as Jerky Boys, but no one really knew who made those phone calls. It wasn't until years later that those guys actually contacted me online, and of course I sent them boxes of DVDs. But I ran across my last box of red DVDs, which is actually depressing for a couple of reasons. One, I realized the DVD is going the way of the dinosaur. I really think that it's like, it's got a life of like, I feel like, in 20 years we'll still be able to go to places in like Iowa and you'll still find DVDs. But I feel like
you can still find VHS stores, and those have been, I mean, obviously very small cult stores that sell VHS exclusively.
Well, funny thing about that, I still have a collection of over 1,000 VHS tapes that I am slowly converting onto drives. So if anyone out there would like to have an internship working for me, converting VHS tapes onto a drive, contact me. Go to chrisgore.com and click on contact. That'll go directly to me and inquire about an internship. And I'll put you on that project. But this is the last box of these DVDs. So and I'm not going to press anymore. This is it. And it just reminded me that I've got, not only was I uncovering all this old technology like Philips CDI movies and laser discs and VHS tapes, but also these DVDs that I didn't realize that I still had. So this isn't any kind of plug. This just happened to be a story, but something that recently happened. I'm going to sell these DVDs because I've given them out. I've given plenty out to people. If you've never heard of this short, you can find clips from it on YouTube, Red with Lawrence Tierney. And if you go to etsy.com/shop/Chris Gore's Love Spray. I know what you're. That's the name of my shop.
I know.
That's the name of my shop. My shop is it's etsy.com. It's ETSY. Etsy.com/shop/Chris Gore's Love Spray. There's no apostrophe. It's Love Spray was the name of my band when I would play rock band. I would always name my band Chris Gore's Love Spray. I'm getting my love all over you.
Yeah, I guess it's kind of like a Gallagher concert, I guess.
Yeah. In any case, so I've got just one box left of these DVDs. If you put in the offer code PodCRASH after you go to etsy.com/shop/Chris Gore's Love Spray, put in the offer code PodCRASH, you'll get 50% off the DVD. So that's I know it sounds weird, but we have to do something because I was on another podcast recently where I was basically saying that I successfully did Film Threat for 25 years and did not make money. And I keep doing things like here I'm doing this podcast and we're not making money.
No,
we're not making. So maybe you can throw a little cash my way. I'll send you a copy of the DVD signed. I'll send you a signed DVD.
Yeah.
And I'll throw in a free prize. If you put in that offer code PodCRASH, you'll get 50% off. And I'll throw in something in addition to the DVD.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say what it is. A free gift. I used to love that when I was a kid. Whenever it would say free gift.
And not know what it is.
And not know what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not going to tell you what it is. I was going to tell you I was going to tell you. I'm not going to tell you now. All right. Let's get right to this week's Crash. I appeared on this was a lot of fun. Mm-hmm. This was one of the best times I've had on a podcast. It was done in person, which I actually prefer to do a podcast in person. As much as I love Skype, doing it in person, there's nothing better than just, hanging out, making eye contact with someone who's sitting across from you and having a good conversation. And Caleb Bacon does a podcast called The Gentleman's Club. And you can check out his website, gentlemansclubpodcast.com. There's no apostrophe, just gentlemansclubpodcast.com. He's also on Twitter at Gentleman's or at Caleb Eats Bacon on Twitter. And Caleb is great. Caleb was one of the first people to respond when PodCRASH came out and we asked, hey, would anyone like to, have Chris as a guest on their podcast, and then
actually, kind of the way it went is I think a lot of people said you should do Caleb's show. And
really?
Yeah. And then
is that how it went?
Yeah, it was kind of, I think it went kind of both ways. I think he was on there, and then people were saying, "Oh, you should do it." And
He jumped in, but what's cool about Caleb is we become good friends on the internet. Like that's how I usually become friends with somebody. Either work with them or I meet them online. Mm-hmm. We chat, and then eventually hang out in person. Beer is involved. Then somehow a woman. It devolves from there. But Caleb, he posts to a group on Facebook. It's called what is it?
The Independent Podcast Alliance.
It's the IPA, which is also a good beer that you should try. But the Independent Podcast Alliance is a group that I'm actually very active on Facebook, and it's all people who independently put out podcasts. And the conversation ranges from content of podcasts to equipment that is you can use to software to how to make money with a podcast. I still think that there's no answer to that question unless you run across an old box of DVDs like I did in my garage, and I'm going to sell them to you at 50% off. Sean, I'll give you one. I'll give you a copy of Red.
That sounds great.
And Caleb, next time I see you, I'll give you a copy of Red. But everyone else, I'll just for listeners of this show, it'll be 50% off. But Caleb was great.
PodCRASH is the code.
PodCRASH is the code. I went to Caleb's apartment, which was in Los Feliz, which is actually really close to like where I used to live in that area. I had an apartment in that area at a period of my life, and I love that area because you could walk to everything. You could walk to Jumbo's Clown Room, which I know that Caleb and I mentioned that at some point in the podcast. Yes. But just went into Caleb's apartment. We just had a very mellow conversation about everything. I mean, it's just all over the map. We talk about nerdy things. We talk about ladies. And we also talk about a job that I've never discussed. I've never discussed actually this job that I've had on this podcast. I actually worked for Hustler magazine. It's my first job when I moved to Los Angeles. And when I moved to LA, I was doing Film Threat magazine at night. And then I was working for Larry Flynt during the day. So I had the kind of the small office where I did Film Threat out of. And then during the day, I wrote jokes for Hustler magazine. And there's a section called Bits and Pieces. I talk about it on the show. But I would write jokes and then I would direct photo shoots with girls where we would do visual representations of the jokes. And I talk about that on the podcast. I can see you. I can see your eyes lighting up there. Everyone gets excited. Like, oh, you worked for Hustler. Like, so did you meet any girls? That will be discussed on Caleb's podcast, Caleb Bacon's The Gentleman's Club. So give it a listen. And Sean and I will be chiming in with comments here and there. Here we are, The Gentleman's Club with the great Caleb Bacon on PodCRASH.
The Gentleman's Club.
This is Archbishop Don Magic Juan, chairman of the board of famous players everywhere, and you're listening to the Gentleman's Club. Chet, preach, tabernacle. It's the only way we're going to get any action.
Coming to you free in MP3 from Los Angeles, it's the Gentleman's Club with me, Caleb Bacon. This is a show where I talk to people guys find interesting about stuff guys find interesting. This week's guest is Chris Gore. Chris Gore, what's happening?
I am enjoying your neighborhood because I used to live around here.
That's right.
I used to live around here. In fact...
Representing East Hollywood.
That's right. I used to live around here because here we are, we're close to Jumbo's Clown Room.
The world-famous Jumbo's Clown Room.
World-famous Jumbo's Clown Room.
I pretty much bring all my out-of-town visitors there.
It's great because it's no cover charge. And
it's technically a strip club.
Right, but there's no nudity there. So if anybody asks you, did you go to a strip club? I did not see any nudity that night.
And it's clown-themed.
Right, clown-themed, which kids love. But I used to live on Normandy Avenue, so I was just walking distance. That was my corner bar. I just, go around there. And what I'm surprised about is, because this area is known for bad parking, I actually found parking before I came up here.
Very nice. Well, it's the middle of the day, which helps.
Right.
At night, in the morning, forget about it.
No, yeah. On the weekends... Yeah, once you find a parking space, you begin to question, do I want to cab it, keep my good parking spot, or drive my car and risk that I may not find parking 4 blocks from my house?
Yeah, I have underground parking, so I'm good to go. But I have friends who just like won't come over.
That used to happen to me. It actually curbed my social life in a way. It curbed it and it helped it because girls would come over and they would find good parking, or they would find parking that was far away, or they might cab it over. So in a way, they were trapped. But I have a story actually related to parking.
Yeah, hit me.
It was a girl who wanted to fuck me, but I couldn't find parking.
Yeah,
and it was a weird thing where I've been dating this girl for I don't know, been dating her for like a few weeks, where you're building up to where you know you're gonna have sex.
Yeah,
like it's like we've gone on the required number of dates where we will finally our genitals are going to say hello.
And she doesn't feel like a skank about it. Ready to go.
No, but she did give me something of a speech in which she said, you know, that if we have sex, that we're going to be exclusive. And I was like, we're going to be exclusive? Like, okay, well, all right. So we'll be exclusive. All right. Well, which at the time I was dating a bunch of different girls. I really didn't want to be exclusive with anybody. So she had laid this fact on me and I was like, all right, so I guess when we do it, I'll be exclusive with her.
For that night.
Well, yeah.
For a 24-hour period.
Yeah. So we went out and it was this thing where we were going back to her place, which was in Hollywood, but not far from my place in Los Feliz. So I'm sitting here, I dropped her off. She's like, okay, you know, she was going to set up candles. She was going to get drinks out, all that sort of preparation.
Sounds exclusive.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So, but all I had to do was just find parking a few blocks from her house. I drove around the block and blocks in the surrounding area. And I really had to piss. I had to pee so bad, and I've talked about this before. I only have one kidney, so my superpower is I urinate 3 times more than the average person. I was dying, and it was a busy like Saturday night in Hollywood. I mean, traffic was bad, and I actually considered, you know, I'm just going to pull over, run up to one of these bushes on the side of one of these apartment buildings, take a leak, and get back in my car. It was so bad. I thought, you know what? Why am I driving around and around looking for parking? I live less than 2 miles away.
Yeah.
I'll go home, I'll take a leak, and I'll come back. This is a half hour after looking for parking, whatnot.
Yeah.
I am racing, and I'm doing that pee dance that, you know, you see kids do when they're like 4 or 5 years old, and you can tell that they got to pee. I'm doing that in the car as I'm driving. I park my car, I race up to my apartment, and I just blaze away into the toilet. Oh, I unleashed. I definitely unleashed, and the phone's ringing as I'm doing that. I'm like, ugh. I call her back because it's more than 30 minutes later. I disappeared. She's like, what happened to you? I'm like, oh, I told her. I said, oh, I couldn't find parking. I had to, you know, I had to piss. I'm sorry. I actually just went back to my apartment. She's like, were you coming over? And right out of a movie, you know, when you hear like it's like a flashback. I had a flashback in my head. You know, you could hear this in some echo. If we have sex, we're going to be exclusive. Exclusive. And when I heard that ringing in the back of my head, she said, so you're going to come over? And I just said, nah, I'm good. And that was it. Parking has actually affected your sex life as well.
And my pocketbook.
Okay, let's hear it.
Because there was no parking, you know, it was the middle of the night. I wasn't going to have her, like, you know, walk a mile or something like that. And so there's a grocery store around the corner. And, you know, there's signs, you know, we tow, we tow, we tow. I've seen tow trucks over there. And she's like, well, I can't park over there. I'm like, look, don't worry about it. And so I convince her to park over there at the grocery store. And we go back to my place. And she's like, well, what happens if I get towed? I'm like, yeah, I'll pay for it. Sure, whatever. Don't worry about it. And so we come over here. We do our thing. We go back. Her car's not there. We got to go to an impound lot in Glendale. It's like 4 a.m. You know, there's like a dog barking. There's nobody there, and
the dog barking right out of some bad TV show.
Yeah, it's like the Rottweiler at the impound lot.
Right,
you know, it's
right.
like the guy has to wake up who's there, and it cost me $300 to have sex that night.
You would have been better off just to go to a massage parlor with release.
I recently saw you do an in-person interview.
Where?
With the Muppets.
Yes.
On G4 television, Attack of the Show.
As for the Muppets, I got to interview the Muppets. Here's what people don't know about that interview. What ended up happening was I'm there with one of what I consider to be one of the best producers on Attack of the Show. And I won't give his name up because he's not here to give me permission to discuss this story, but we got into trouble when I was about to go into the room to interview Miss Piggy and Kermit. The performers, the people who perform Miss Piggy and Kermit, were basically under chairs that had no bottoms, and they were completely visible.
Okay.
Now, one of the things that the Jim Henson and company have done over the years is to control the way that any image of Muppets scene that is behind the scenes is kept secret.
Makes sense.
For the most part. There's that recent documentary that came out, Being Elmo, about the guy who created Elmo.
Oh, I didn't see that.
It's a documentary that's I have not seen it. Really interested in seeing that one. But I know that, for example, when they were making the new Muppets movie with Jason Segel, that children were not allowed on the set because they've had too many cases where kids would come to the set and they'd see the Muppets sitting on a table. Basically, they're dead.
Yeah, they just start screaming and crying.
Dead Muppets. So my producer brought a flip cam and, thought that, it'd be cool to get some sort of behind the scenes. And he actually took some video of them doing the Muppets. When the door came open for me to go in and do my interview, he got a little bit of video footage of the people who were playing Kermit and Miss Piggy, which turned 5 minutes later, the publicist from the Disney company had contacted the talent department at G4, who called me and were screaming and yelling, what are you doing with a camera in there? It's unauthorized. You're not supposed to shoot the performers, the play. And first of all, I knew this. I warned the producer. I said, I don't think we should be doing this because I happen to know for a fact that they keep the performers who play the Muppets secret. They keep that behind closed doors. So that turned into a whole hullabaloo, really over nothing. I mean, he deleted the file and showed it to the girl. So I really felt bad for him. And whenever I get in situations like that where people are yelling at me, I have to sort of keep from... I have to kind of keep from laughing because I know that they're upset for a reason. I also know this is not a big deal. It's not a big deal. Relax, folks. But what was funny is Jason Segel then appeared like a week or so later. He was on Saturday Night Live, and when they do the goodbye at the very end of the show and everybody sort of gathers up on stage, the people who played Kermit and Miss Piggy were up on stage with their arms up the rears of those characters. So effectively revealing themselves. So I kind of think that, okay, I guess that they just decide when it's cool to do that. But what was weird is everyone was giddy at that junket. This is part of what I do for my job, but they were just giddy because they got to interview the Muppets. But I think the best thing was when I got to interview Jason Segel and asked him, why is it that the Muppets are so popular with adults? Why are we sort of entranced by this? And I had to admit that I actually got nervous when I went in to interview Kermit and Miss Piggy because I've been watching them since I was a kid. And Jason Segel,
have you ever interviewed a puppet before?
No,
maybe a real doll?
No, yeah, I was going to say, I've done some strange things. I interviewed James Dean's grave once for an early issue of Film Threat.
Yeah.
I went to Fairmont, Indiana and did that. But when I talked to Jason Segel, he said that the reason that Muppets have a place in our hearts is because it reminds us of what we wanted to be when we were kids. Okay, so I can see that you're kind of giddy over the Muppets. It's weird how what was strange was because I do a lot of these film junkets.
Yeah.
Those Muppets they're like rock stars. People were starstruck.
Well, they're icons in popular culture for years and years. So it's like people that are my age and your age. Everybody knows them. Well,
you grow up with the Muppets. Effectively, we all grew up with Grover. Grover, the voice of Yoda. Grover does the voice of Yoda. Let's be honest.
Yes. No, my question is though, in terms of this whole incident that you're discussing about your producer taking a picture now. Has there ever, for you as a person, that's your attitude and just going in and doing whatever and just having fun, is that something where you would never want to do that? What
do you mean? Break that?
Break that code where it's that's where you were we gotta draw the line on that?
There's a weird thing, I do like to mess with people, but there's sort of there is just a level of respect, and I guess maybe it comes from when I was a kid growing up with the Muppets that, I would never break that trust. But you know what? You know what else? You can listen to us on Stitcher. That's right. Listen to PodCRASH with me, that Chris Gore, on your iPhone, Android phone, BlackBerry, and on the internet. Stitcher Smart Radio for your phone. Find it in the App Store or at Stitcher.com. Stitcher Smart Radio, the smarter way to listen to radio. See how I snuck that in?
That was perfect.
That was terrible, actually. I thought that was the worst. Let's get back to the podcast. Back to Caleb Bacon's The Gentleman's Club. Which is strange that there's not a porn star Muppet. I don't know why, don't they have a Muppet now who has AIDS?
I hope so.
On Sesame Street, there's actually one of the Muppets, and I don't know that it's in the U.S. yet, but I know that in South America, they on one of the versions of Sesame Street that they make for other countries, there's one of the Muppets happens to have AIDS because it's tragic.
No, so not even HIV positive, full blown.
Yeah, one of the Muppets is HIV. Yeah, I mean, this is something you can Google. I know. This was a big story in the news, but how did we segue into this?
So one of the Muppets
where is this going?
On Sesame Street, he's like, "Oh, I've got a cold sore. Hopefully my immune system can handle it, or else I'm going to die."
Oh, God. Well, it's like you can get those virus plushies now, where they take just certain
I've seen that.
viruses and turn them into plushies.
Yeah.
It's not really cute. Not cute. Certain things, no matter how much you try to make them cute, are just not cute.
Who else have you interviewed recently that's been memorable, other than a puppet?
Oh, wow. I'd say one of the most memorable ones recently was Mickey Rourke, who I've interviewed twice and who is freaking insane. I mean, I felt like when I was interviewing him for The Wrestler that he was auditioning to be a villain in a Batman movie. I mean, he really was like, oh, they have to cast Mickey Rourke as the Riddler because he's just freaking nuts. I mean, he ended up playing sort of the lame villain in Iron Man 2, but I think you don't need any sort of pomp and circumstance special effects to make him creepy and scary. He's kind of like that in real life. He has a presence. And during the interview, I was talking to him about Immortals, which I happen to really like. He threatened me with a sword, which was fun, and then gave it to me. He's like, "Hey, you take it." And then I took the sword out of the interview, and the people from the junket looked at me and goes, "Yeah, you're not going to get to keep that."
So what does it look like when a Mickey Rourke threatens somebody with a sword?
He's intimidating. He's intimidating for sure. But really, for the most part, when I interview celebs, I go in with an attitude like, I just don't give a shit. And then the don't give a shit, which I've said many times before, the don't give a shit attitude is like a cologne that attracts vagina. It truly is. If you act like you don't care, it's something that people are attracted to that aspect. Like you just don't care. And by that I mean it's not that I don't care. It's that I don't care what you think of me. I don't give a shit. It doesn't matter. So then I go in and I know I can say anything, and I'll play off them. And you literally have seconds before the interview starts to kind of get some kind of rapport going, which I try to do.
Hey, Mickey, nice sword.
Yeah, exactly. Like really quickly, just like some comment, whatnot. I try to have sort of a real bonding moment, and then just like ask questions and just like make it a real conversation, like we're doing now. The only problem is I have 4 minutes, and a lot of times there's someone there with a counter, like giving you these signals. Wrap it up.
There's always a bitch,
which is a pain in the ass. But I don't know. I think G4 trusts me to do it enough to go and do it on my own without a producer, untethered. So
Oh, that's nice.
I've had the opportunity to go to other countries and interview people, which I really like. So got to interview Andy Serkis recently, which was awesome. Andy Serkis, of course, played Gollum and also in Rise of the Planet of the Apes, who may in fact get nominated for an Oscar for his performance as Caesar.
I didn't see Rise of the Planet of the Apes, but it seems like I should.
I love the Planet of the Apes movies, the old school ones.
Yeah.
Although what they did is we did this motion capture thing where I got to be an ape from Rise of the Planet of the Apes. And what's so funny, when I was talking to Andy Serkis, I said, I wore the motion capture suit, and I wanted to ask you, aside from fully shaving my body, what other motion capture tips can you give me? And then we went to this whole conversation about how, basically the suit is covered with 50 balls, which is the second most balls I've ever been covered in. But I'm having this, semi-serious conversation with Andy. It's fun to be able to make him laugh. But what was really cool, we went to the motion capture studio, and so I was sort of demonstrating the technology that they used to create Rise of the Planet of the Apes. But what I did was I did the walk from the original Planet of the Apes. You know what I'm saying? Like the old school Roddy McDowell. It's sort of it's sort of a bouncy thing, and it's more like it's more of an erect sort of. It's a very fanciful walk, like a butler who's got to take a crap. That's kind of what That's kind of what the old school. So I was acting like an old school Planet of the Apes, but in the new school design on a motion capture monitor, which was kind of funny.
Now I officially know why it says Nerd Leberty on all your bios.
Well, that's the thing is like, I don't know, one of the things, and I think this actually is helpful when it comes to being successful in the entertainment industry, is trying to focus what you do. Mm-hmm. Focus what you do. You're an actor. Okay. You are a writer. You are a director. You are a producer. You are a TV host. You are a blah, blah, blah. And when I look at my career is so complicated. There are people that knew me when I was in the magazine world because I didn't just do Film Threat magazine. I also did a magazine about video games.
Did you do Hustler too?
I worked on Hustler actually as
We'll go back to that.
Yeah. We'll go back to that one. But so there were people that knew me in one world as a writer in print and magazines. Then I wrote books about film. Then I did TV, so that I would literally have completely different sets of friends from different groups that knew me in different ways. And I guess I have I have this sort of list of credits that's kind of all over the map. Mm-hmm. Don't even try to make sense of my LinkedIn profile. You know what I mean? It's just, it's all over the place. So that's why I just started calling myself a nerd celebrity. But I think I have to change that now because I feel that like Chris Hardwick with Nerdist has kind of co-opted the word nerd, and I can't really use the term nerd anymore. I feel like he's done such an amazing job with his whole network of podcasts and the Nerdist brand that if I use the word nerd celebrity anymore, I feel like people are going to say I'm copying him, although I've used that term since like 2005.
Let's talk about Hustler.
Hustler. Okay, yes, Hustler.
Now, I have read that magazine for the pictures.
Yes.
Not recently, but, in the 90s, which is probably when you were over there.
It was the 90s. If one were to pursue a career as a gynecologist, an extremely useful magazine.
Yeah?
Yes.
It's right up in there.
You see more of a woman than you may have ever seen. And it was actually my first job when I moved to Los Angeles.
So when was that?
This was 89. And I was doing Film Threat as like this underground magazine that was like a newsprint and it was cheaply done.
That must have been a huge pain in the balls. To do DIY stuff now, there's more structures in place.
Like back in the day, I look and I'm like, how did I do all this stuff? And I just done... Film Threat, it was sort of this bizarre thing because what would happen in Film Threat is, yes, it was a movie magazine, but at the same time, I couldn't keep myself from making fun of things in the magazine. So it ended up in a way being like people compared it to like Spy magazine because there would be a sense of humor woven throughout, which really came from my bizarre sensibilities. So one of the editors at Hustler had recognized that and just invited me to be an editor and edit a section called Bits and Pieces where I got to direct photo shoots with naked girls.
I'm listening.
But it was like, it sounds way more fun than it actually was in real life.
Well, so why did somebody say, you write funny things? How about direct naked girls?
Right, exactly. Well, it was one of those things where on Monday I'd go in, we'd come up with ideas. So it'd be concepting. And I'd say, well, I want to do a fake movie poster. And the fake movie poster will be The Revenge of Anne Frank. And what it is Anne Frank has risen from the dead as a zombie, and she's risen from the dead to kill Nazi skinheads. Because I always hated Nazi skinheads growing up in Detroit. So I
apologize for my haircut.
That's okay. So I will play one of the Nazi skinheads. We'll put a bald cap on me, and then of course the editor would go, and Anne Frank is naked. Well, of course she's naked. It's a zombie. It's a naked zombie Anne Frank. Risen from the dead to kill Nazi skinheads, and I have a swastika on my forehead, and she's ripping off my scalp. So that was the concept. Then we would draw sort of like what it would look like, and we'd look at the props. It's like, okay, we need to do a bald cap, we need some wardrobe, we need a naked girl who needs zombie makeup, and then we need a set, and we need some sort of harsh horror looking lighting. And then on Friday, I would direct the photo shoot. The photos would come back the next week. I'd edit the photos. I'd write the copy that would surround it. I always like to say the range of humor was toilet poo poo homo butt. Yeah. And if you could throw in a little politics, that's what some sort of social commentary woven into the joke. That's something that I would push.
Like Nazis are bad.
Nazis, don't like them. Not a favorite of mine.
Yeah.
Not a fan of the Nazis. That was how that took place. But what was weird was it was the least sexy thing you could think of. I mean, first of all, hot lights. After a while, a girl under hot lights doesn't smell good. That's A. B, there was always some drama. Either it was a drug dealer boyfriend or something about pay or something about getting a ride or showing up on time.
Yeah.
You really you have to create a 2 to 3 hour window. One girl wouldn't show up and so we'd have to use a different one. I mean, at the time, the whole time I was worked at Hustler, I had a girlfriend. And
Idiot.
Yeah, I know. And my friends were so envious, and I'm thinking, I never want to have sex with any of these girls. They were just really unattractive.
Not that you turned it down, you just didn't want to put in the effort.
It was just one of those things where, to me, their personalities were so vile that, and I felt so sad. It was either sad or just bad. And they were coming in to pose for $100 or $200.
Nice.
And
to be Zombie Anne Frank.
Zombie Anne Frank. I mean, that was one of the. But strangely, Larry Flint happened to like the stuff that I did so much. He actually did an entire magazine dedicated just to the stuff that I did.
Can you do a Larry Flint impression?
This is Larry Flint. Okay, that's terrible, but it was definitely something. Let me tell you a story.
That's Jimmy Stewart, actually.
Yeah, it's a little bit of Jimmy. It is it's basically Jimmy Stewart as he's drinking milk of magnesia or something. But what I would do is I would call up people in the company, like intercompany calls. I would put myself on cell phone and do the Larry Flint imitation and scare the shit out of people. It was
nice.
One of my favorite things to do. But while I was there, I'll admit to this, I stole office supplies probably every day from when I worked there, to the point where I still have envelopes and Post-it notes from when I worked there in the 90s. I still have them to today.
Do they say Hustler on them?
No.
What's funny is whenever anyone finds out that I used to write for Hustler and worked there and directed these photo shoots, they're always curious about the girls. Mm-hmm. And I can just say that I could just confirm it's incredibly disappointing.
It doesn't seem as glamorous as you would think it would be.
It's about the as far away from glamorous. I mean, I really got to give credit to men who work in porn.
Yeah.
Men who work in pornography, I feel like the fact that under those circumstances, hot lights, you're surrounded by people, there's all this pressure, that you can perform at the level that they're able to perform, bravo to them.
Yeah.
Because I got to say, just being there's just nothing. It's actually incredibly clinical. In a way, it's like the doctor's office.
I would imagine it's probably being a lot like being backstage at a strip club, like in the girls' locker room, and just being very like tense. Or I don't know, what the hell am I talking about?
Yeah, exactly. What are you talking about? I think that would actually be fun. It just depends on the type of strip club, but not a lot of people know that I've done that job. It's not something I actually put on my resume. It's not like I'm. It's just it's weird, like, because you never know who you're going to meet. Some people have like a weird thing about adult content, but like I mean, Francis Ford Coppola made like a lot of directors started out making like films that were of an adult nature. I mean, famously Sylvester Stallone, that movie Italian Stallion.
Yeah, well, I mean, a lot of like big time writers and and directors. I mean, that's where you start out making the schlock, and then you build your way up.
Right, and then you find out though, if you see Italian Stallion, he's pretty much hung like Bucky Larson. Although no one that I know has seen Bucky Larson, which has a 0% rating on Rotten Tomatoes,
which is fascinating.
Anyways, back to the Gentleman's Club.
But it was a good. I mean, I'm grateful to Larry Flint for that job because it was my first real job where I got a salary.
Sounds like a fun time in your life.
It was fun. And I felt like I got paid to learn. But looking back at like the jokes, I won't say that I'm proud of the stuff that I did there. And it's not something I put on my LinkedIn resume, but I'm not going to deny that I did it. I mean, I used my real name. It says Chris Gore on those issues.
Now, how much of that was you making poor creative choices versus what they wanted you to do?
I would always try to pitch something where it's just like, okay, I try to pitch a movie parody, or I try to pitch something that was what they called a breakaway. And I did do one where I had aliens having sex with a girl. So these aliens landed, grabbed a girl, brought this girl into in the Martian spaceship, and had it was like tentacle porn, but it was live action. And I did this like in the 90s. So it's like, this was like I'd seen like movies like Legend of the Overfiend. I thought, well, I want to do that like in real life. Let's see if I can do that. I even recreated one of my favorite movies, The Head That Wouldn't Die, or The Brain That Wouldn't Die. I did a photo shoot where I had a girl. This guy was getting a blowjob from his girlfriend in a car. The car crashes. These are like fumettis. So they're done like comic books, but shot live action. And this is how they'd be like 5 or 6 pages in the magazine. So this guy's getting a blowjob from his girlfriend. He gets in a car accident. Her head gets chopped off. He takes the head back to his lab, brings the head back to life. Needs to attach the head to a body because her body was mangled. Goes to a strip club, finds a black chick, brings her back to his lair, chops her head off, takes the white chick's body, puts it on the black girl's, takes the white chick's head, puts it on the black girl's body, and then has sex with it. This is what I was creatively able to do. What job, in my early 20s that could I have done where I could even have like come up with that idea? They were very supportive of just like any stupid thing that I thought of.
And they're saying, good job.
Good job, to the point where like Larry's like, do a whole magazine of just this stuff, which I found out later was like the least selling issue of their spin-off specials. It's like college girls on the beach would sell better, but it was just a way that like, oh, I've got this budget to create weird things, push the limits.
So how'd you make the jump to television?
That's another story. I mean, like having done Film Threat, and this was like when Film Threat was transitioning from print, where there was a paper crisis in like the late 90s where paper like doubled in price. And so a lot of small magazines went under. I mean, around the same time, Spy Magazine went out of business, The Nose, other music magazines. A lot of the alternative magazines just went under in the late 90s because of this paper crisis, or they stopped publishing. And basically, because of that, we started an email newsletter that grew to like 100,000 readers, which was big at the time. And then in the 90s, yeah. And then 100,000 people getting this email. And then because people already were familiar with the magazine, and then we did this website. And then from that, there were just some reviews. I was just doing this email newsletter with reviews on the website, hoping one day to bring the printed magazine back. And someone from a show called The X Show read filmthreat.com and read some of my reviews and just thought that they were weird and funny, and thought, well, this guy, maybe he could do TV. And at the time, I'd only ever been like a guest on television shows and never actually done real TV. So they brought me in to do an audition, and like I was saying earlier about the who gives a shit attitude is like a cologne that attracts vagina. At the time, I was writing 2 books, which I don't recommend doing, and was busy. I didn't want to go in for a TV audition. This is a waste of time. I got 2 books. I got deadlines looming. This is a distraction for me. They brought me in. They said, well, what do you think of Star Wars Episode 1? I'll tell you what I think. And I went on a whole rant about how lame it was and how, George Lucas probably, they say, write what you know. And I can tell you what George Lucas has been doing for the last 10 years, 20 years. He's been going to a lot of meetings, because Episode 1 is a series of meetings. The Jedi go to have a meeting with the Neimoidians, the Federation. Then they go down. The Federation has a meeting via Skype with what's her name, the Queen Amidala on the planet. Then there's another meeting with Darth Sidious and Darth Maul. Then the Jedi have a meeting with the Council of the Jar Jar Binks people. It's relentless. It's a series of people having boring meetings. This was my rant that I gave to them.
And also, you're not wrong.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like, it was exactly like in Screenwriting 101, all the things they tell you not to do is what George Lucas did in solely writing Star Wars Episode 1. This guy was a little out of practice in terms of filmmaking, but I could rave on and on about great things he's done, and then the prequels is a source of disappointment. So
when they come back in 3D, you're not going to go see them?
Of course I'm going to go see them. How can I complain about them if I don't see them? That's half the joy of...
It's just a series of meetings in 3D.
Half the joy of Star Wars, talking about Star Wars now, is complaining about it and how it could have been better. But
you're a nerd celebrity.
Yeah. So I came in and I basically did this whole rant about how Star Wars Episode 1 is a series of meetings. And from that, they thought that was funny. Can I do this on camera? I came in and I wrote up a script, and then just started details on the X Show, which was kind of like the Man Show, but a more serious take on The Man Show, like The Man Show meets The View. And I was their movie guy, and I came in and did this segment called Gory Details, and in which I did reviews and made fun of stuff. And then after being on that for a couple months, they said, hey, do you want to do another show? I pitched this show called The New Movie Show, which the original title of that show was supposed to be Roger Ebert is a Big Fat Idiot, which I love and respect Roger for
that big fat idiot.
It's inspired. No, I love Roger. He inspired me, but we were just sort of playing off the Rush Limbaugh book. Rush Limbaugh's a Big Fat Idiot, written by Al Franken. So
that's right. I
think that would have been a better title for this as a TV show, but they ended up going with The New Movie Show with Chris Gore.
Who's a big fat idiot?
Yes. I'm a doughy idiot. I feel like I'm sort of building a doughy Seth Rogen-esque, Seth Rogen pre-Green Hornet, doughy, sexy.
Fozzie the Bear.
Yes, Fozzie the Bear, like outer shell.
Well, good luck.
I'm still working on it. Anyways.
Well, they still allow you on television, so you must be doing all right.
So that was sort of just the genesis was, how did I get on TV? I didn't want to be on TV. No aspirations and just didn't care. And that, whereas I think when you meet a lot of actors and actresses, we're talking about actors and actresses, the stink of desperation. It's one of the things when you meet and having cast other things, it's that please love me, please accept me, please. And it would, because I'll get asked advice by actors and actresses at film festivals and whatnot. What should I do? And I said, just become a producer. Then you will develop material for things that speak to your strengths. Any successful actor, Billy Bob Thornton, Tom Cruise, they're producers.
Unless you're a chick, then it's totally different.
If you're a hot chick, just remain a hot chick. Be frozen and do not age over 30, because as we know, Hollywood is a lot like Carousel, at least for women. It's a lot like Carousel in the domed cities, portrayed in Logan's Run. Once you turn 30, you're dead to Hollywood. I wonder what's happening with that case on IMDb of that woman.
That's right. She's suing because they put her real age on there.
They put her real age on there, and that's something that I've experienced. I'm way older than people think I am. I've got sort of this sort of boyish face, and when I tell people like how old I am, and I don't say how old I am, I say what year I was born, because then it forces them to do math. And I was born in 1965, so then they have to do math and then figure that out, and they go, "Oh wow, like you look good." And it's like, well, I was an indoor kid, indoor kid, so not really going into the sun. I haven't really abused my body too much with drugs or done anything too self-destructive, and I like to think alcohol acts as a natural preservative. Okay, so I guess the lesson here is use sunblock or stay indoors. And not like I have any secret. I just feel like I just don't do things that are stupid to abuse my body, but I don't feel qualified to give advice to other people about how they should live their lives in terms of like their physical and mental well-being. Mm-hmm. Believe me, if you're taking advice from me on that, you're making a big mistake. Look at me. But I got to step out of the podcast just for a second to say that, like, okay, Sean is my producer on this show, and he and I have, to the best of our ability, tried to technically do the show without any real knowledge coming in, looking up software on the internet, trying to just buy the equipment that people suggest in the IPA.
You do what you think you're supposed to do, and that's what we're doing.
Exactly. So previously, I've been using my MacBook Pro to record into GarageBand. Other people have suggested using handheld digital recorders. We've had so many technical problems back and forth with stuff. This is being recorded on an iPhone.
Yes.
We're recording this on an iPhone now. So I don't know what you think in terms of the audio quality from previous editions of PodCRASH, but right now we're standing at a mic stand. I've got the iPhone in a swirly gig with a pop filter on it, a little spongy pop filter. I'll take a picture and I'll tweet it out from the PodCRASH Show Twitter account. That's at PodCRASH Show on Twitter. But this is how ghetto this arrangement. And the dumb thing is, we were testing microphones. In fact, when I went to New York, on last week's podcast, you thought that I faked all that.
I thought you put the ambient noise of you driving in there. Like, I thought you did something to kind of like...
I didn't do that. I didn't do that. That was just recorded on, and everything when I was getting out of the car, when I was in the cab going to the hotel, all of that was real, just being recorded. It was because I just didn't have time to do the podcast before I left for New York. So I just recorded it on the iPhone and then come to realize that the iPhone actually, look, this is not a plug for the iPhone at all. This just goes to show that it's really just about to me, it's all about content. I think the audio quality is less important, but the audio quality is important. You at least need to be able to hear people enunciate what they're saying. This is really boring for people that are tuning into this to hear more about breasts and the period of time I spent at Hustler.
I think we should get back into it.
Let's get back to the Gentleman's Club with Caleb Bacon.
Something to that.
So I think that's how I've been able to. I think it matters less for dudes in the entertainment industry
certainly.
in terms of age. I mean, look at God. I think the combined ages of people who were in the the combined ages of like Stallone, Schwarzenegger. Name the top ones. Stallone, Schwarzenegger. It's like that big action movie that they all did, The Expendables.
Yeah.
You combine the ages, it's like 600 years.
Yeah.
Of all the people in that. But there really isn't anyone with that kind of gravitas. They're not with that kind of just that weight, that like Kirk Douglas or Charlton Heston like manliness. There are no
Jonah Hill. Oh.
Yeah, exactly. There's not that what are you going to? There's just no one with that kind of weight. There's not that grizzled, manly like Kirk Douglas, Charlton Heston, and even in the '80s, maybe they were on the wane from that generation. We're systematically becoming as men bigger and bigger pussies,
but prettier.
Yeah, prettier,
not
better skin, but not like when you look at someone like That's why I'm excited about like Henry Cavill playing Superman in the upcoming Superman movie. I met him doing the junket for Immortals, got to talk to him, in which he told me that he didn't tell me anything about the movie, but he did say that Superman, the best script he's ever read.
Wow.
And the guy, when you look at him in Immortals, he's not a pretty boy. He's not a pretty boy in the sense that I think that, Christopher Reeves is a pretty boy. Brandon Routh, pretty boy, also a Christopher Reeve lookalike. This Superman they're going after is really a Superman in the sense that like Charlton Heston was a man, like grizzled, imperfect, not a perfect looking specimen. I feel like, those kind of actors.
Yeah, John Wayne didn't have a six-pack.
Yeah, exactly. John Wayne didn't have a six-pack. Neither of us have six-packs. But also you look at like a dude to maintain a six-pack, you pretty much, if you're maintaining, you pretty much gay. Let's be honest. Like if you've got a six-pack, you're probably a gay dude, because girls really don't care. But if you care that much about your body, then you're maintaining it probably for yourself and or other dudes.
You're multiple lovers.
Or multiple lovers.
That you meet
God.
in the locker room at the Equinox.
See, this is why there's so many people will say that they hate the gays. Look, I dislike gays for completely different reasons. They have way more fun than us.
Yeah.
Way more fun. Their dating lives are better in terms of just like they all date like dudes. They have, first of all, dress fabulously. Their parties are amazing. They're planning Halloween giving themselves 364 days to plan for the next Halloween.
And have costume parties in the interim.
Right. Like in a lot of ways, because I have so many gay friends in Hollywood. I have been dubbed honorary gay.
Wow.
Because the thing is it's like I wish I could live the lifestyle you guys do, just not with a dude's butt. Can I just do? I want to do all the things you're doing just with a vagina. If there's a way we can just flip that. And I've even had I was complimenting you earlier on your apartment and how neat it is.
Thank you.
Tidy.
Thank you.
And organized. I love it. I'm the same way. And when I had my own apartment back in the day, people would come over and they would immediately think I was gay. Just from the fact that everything was so neat, organized, tidy. You'd open up the junk drawer, had things compartmentalized that would go specifically. There's where the Scotch tape goes. Definitely. But then you would look at the content of what was there, and there'd be like a football, and there'd be like
porno mags. So when you look at a hammer, my tools, which are all clean and organized and in different drawers and cabinets, so I can with labels on the outside that tell you exactly.
Some sort of hybrid.
Yeah. So definitely a girl that I dated at the time that spent a lot of time at that apartment said to me, she said, "You has the gay." That's the way she would describe it. So
she was a sassy black lady.
Yes, but I think we can learn from our gay brothers and sisters about better ways to live our lives.
Chris, something I like to do on the show is get a piece of advice from my guest, my primarily male audience on living. And you've had a variety of success in all sorts of different areas, and it seems like you sort of just tipped a great piece of living information, which was live like a gay.
Learn from that, because girls, here's why. I'll tell you why. Because when women come and see your apartment, they literally are looking at like something when they see an apartment that's organized and you have you actually have things in your refrigerator, you have cooking utensils and know how to use them. It shows that you can also be domestic. So you could be crazy, freaking insane. Like when you're dating them, when you bring them to your apartment, they're evaluating you based on how good of a mate you'll be for the future. I'm not saying that you want that, but you may want the option to want that in the future, or at least trick them into thinking that that's what you want.
I do have friends come to me on occasion who they're having trouble in their relationships. I'm the guy that you always come to. And the dumb thing is I will always tell them, have a clean apartment. A woman wants to see that you've created a nest. It's dumb. I mean, look, you can have sex tips all day, but just having a place that is neat and tidy, a girl sees that and thinks, hey, not only will this guy make a good mate, but also he could clean up after me. Not that that's ever going to happen.
Well, I mean, no girl wants to be living with a guy or hanging out with a guy, and they don't want to step in shit. That's the worst part when you're living with somebody messy and they just leave things out.
This is why you might find me with my laptop sitting around, and I'm feeling aroused, and I'm getting like, oh my God, this is awesome. And a girl walks in, she thinks maybe I'm doing something, and she sees that, what am I doing? I'm looking at pictures of things organized neatly. That has happened before to me. I'll find it and go, oh, that's so, and you can hear me kind of, I get very excited. I'm very enthusiastic.
Did you just have like multiple releases when you go into like the Container Store and just?
Are you kidding me? Oh my God! Yes, the Container Store. I think there's one in Pasadena that I have gone to, and I love the Container Store. I love anything like that where it's just you can come up with new ways of
storing something.
I just want to be able to find stuff. I have a lot of cool stuff in terms of collectibles, and I'm juggling multiple projects and whatnot, and I want to be able to find things. So if I say, I have a blah, 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 I have a rocket-firing Boba Fett that's custom made that I bought on eBay 15 years ago, I know exactly where it is. In fact, this is how I would organize my collectibles. I would put them in bins, and then on the outside of a bin would be a giant number, and the number would say SW16. Okay, so that would be on the outside of the box. Then the SW16 would correspond to a manifest that I would have on my computer that would be a printout and an itemization of everything that was in that box.
Right.
You're looking at me like you think I'm crazy.
No. I think that's perfectly fine. Because if you have a lot of stuff, then you should be organizing it. Because how can you prove that you have it if it's just sitting around in a random box of stuff?
And if you apply for an internship with me, I will teach you all these organizational methods.
Bring your own brooms.
Okay, let's go back to the final segment from the Gentlemen's Club with Caleb Bacan. What I'm shocked about is how many women, when I'll have at the time would go to their apartments, and their apartments are just shit. Those domesticated, those skills, that skill set of women being homemakers is lost. It's like a lost art. It's like there's been a little role reversal.
It's bullshit.
Right. But are you asking me to impart a piece of advice?
If you got it.
I got a good one. Let's say you're dating a girl and you want to put your penis in her butt, which to me, that's sort of like, it's definitely the holy grail, if not the brown holy grail of, because it's a thing that for the most part, girls don't want to do. And what I like to do is when I would date a girl. I have a girlfriend, by the way. So this is in my single days. I would always sort of find the one thing that they didn't want to do, and it would be my goal to do that thing. And the recurring thing was always like girls like, oh, that's something I don't want to do. What I would say is this to them. I would say, look, to me, anal sex, it's like the yoga of sex acts. You really need to do it just right in order for it to be pleasurable. So, look, I would not want to force you to do something that you don't want to do. But I can just tell you that if the only way that anal sex is pleasurable, if you approach it in the way that you approach yoga. Now, why am I saying something as stupid as that? I'm saying that because what I'm doing is I'm painting a picture in a girl's head that like of something that they already like. And if they don't already do yoga, they have aspirations to, or they have friends who do it. Yoga, I associate that with something that's spiritual and pleasurable. So you're associating this bad thing, or what's in their mind a bad thing, anal sex, with a thing that they aspire to or revere or love or enjoy doing, yoga, and you're combining the bad with the good, right? It's the same. This is what the Republicans do when they're trying to argue some political point. It's compassionate conservatism, right? It's like, they'll take something that's a horrible program and they'll give it a cute name, like the program to save the children, that's reclassifying pizza as a vegetable. So by planting those words in a girl's head, you basically, all it is like planting seeds. You'll say that. After a while, she'll bring it up because she's so curious. Because it's like, if you're saying it's only pleasurable, then you must know how to do it.
You're the butt yoga master.
The butt yoga master.
So that's worked for you multiple times, I'm guessing.
Every time.
Every time.
Every time. And
100%.
100% success rate with that. Okay, so that's our show for this week. You can follow me on Twitter at @ThatChrisGore. You can follow the show. You want to find out when there are new episodes of PodCRASH at PodCRASH Show on Twitter. And you can also, if you want to drop me a line, go to chrisgore.com, click on contact if you're interested in that internship. Sean, where can we find you?
Angry Hero Sean. Sean is spelled SHAWN if you guys are interested in. If you're a podcast and you want to be crashed by Chris, that's how you find out.
But it's got to be a really good podcast at this point, because now you're being inundated with stuff. And I want to do some podcasts that I've never done before. I really want to do a crafting podcast.
That's a mission of mine.
Is there a podcast on organizing things?
There's probably, I'm sure, an OCD podcast somewhere.
You know what? I was actually going to suggest that. I think that if there's a podcast, you'll probably find in the health and medicine section, there's got to be a podcast about OCD. But here's the thing. If think about this. I could spend thousands of dollars on therapy to fix my OCD, or I could enjoy a neatly organized space. Who does that hurt? Having a place that's organized and my towels and sheets are all folded. I know it's embarrassing, and I'm embarrassed and proud at the same time.
You shouldn't be embarrassed. I'm just telling you off the bat, you can't be embarrassed about having a clean place, because a clean home is a clean mind, in my opinion.
You know what? I've always said that. I really think that your environment and the space that you live, work, whatever, it's a reflection of your inner self. So if you're scatterbrained or confused and you lack direction in life, you're going to have crap everywhere in your bedroom or your office and whatnot. I mean, look, things get messy, and then you take that time once a week to organize. Or like me, I am doing it when I'm listening to DVD commentary. I'm organizing stuff, but I really think it's a reflection of your inner self, your outer space. I sound like I'm insane. This is incredible. What can I say? But folks, that's our show for this week. Thanks for tuning in. Do me a favor. If you're up on iTunes, give us a good review. Give us, if you feel I deserve it, 5-star rating. And please post a comment on iTunes when you look up PodCRASH with that Chris Gore. That's me. That's it for this week. See you on our next episode, except I won't see you. I'm not going to have any contact with you whatsoever unless it's on the internet. And Sean, I have one last thing to say. Maybe you'll join me. Let's get out of here! if you're still listening to this, you're probably a lot like me. You're the kind of person who stays till the very end of a movie and looks at all the credits. The lights are coming up and you're walking out. You're probably a lot like me. And for that, you shall be rewarded. The first 5 people to @reply to @PodCRASH Show on Twitter and say, let's get out of here, will win a free DVD. Now, it's going to be a DVD of my choice, so it may not be very good, maybe some review copy that's been collecting dust, but I'll send you a DVD. Let's get out of here. That's all you have to say, @PodCRASH Show. First 5 people. And if you send a self-addressed stamped envelope to PodCRASH with that Chris Gore, 5042 Wilshire Boulevard, PMB 1500, Los Angeles, California 90036. Send me a self-addressed stamped envelope. I will send you back a free gift. Something you're really going to enjoy. Trust me. Later.
The other thing is, the other piece of advice is I'm a big fan of dirty talk with chicks. I like to do that. And,
Okay.
But, when you date the young girls, they're timid in this arena. What I would always do to get them to talk dirty would be to play a Simon Says game. It's very simple. What you do is you say, repeat after me. So I'll say something like, oh God, I really want to grab your tits. And then she has to repeat that, but say, no, you can't. So she'll say, no, you can't touch my tits. And you'll say, oh man, I really want to grab your ass. And she'll say, no, you can't grab my ass. And then after a while, it becomes like, they start doing it, aristocrat style, where they're making their own thing up,
Yeah.
and they're kind of adding, and basically what you've gotten them to do is to be comfortable talking dirty. And to me, in my head, oral sex in the AURAL sense is a turn on. It's great. It's like
More so for chicks than guys, even.
Yeah, exactly. Like, women love that stuff. So if you can teach a girl how to talk dirty, it's a useful tool both for yourself and for her.